My Lords, I rise to speak to my amendments number 216, A, B and C, but I would like to associate myself with most of the other amendments, certainly the ones in the names of my noble friends. And whilst Lord Pack in 211 and 212 sort of proposes an outright ban, I don't agree with this, but we do need to allow for emergencies. But I do agree with the thrust of what he's trying to say. So, yes, I agree with my noble friends, and about the importance of not cancelling elections for LGR, but I think it doesn't take into account the funny business around cancelling mayoral or PCC elections, or the cancellation of council polls when LGR isn't the reason. So my amendments are drawn more widely than Baroness Scott and Lord Jameson's. Now, there hasn't been a revolution here for about 350 years, and you might say that's because the British are a placid race, but they can easily be stirred. And the reason for the rule of law has been sustained for so long is that we're a democratic country, and we sit here in this house, out of a building, the cradle of democracy in the mother of parliaments, and the people of this nation go to the ballot box to select those to represent them in pursuance of a stronger economy, better lives, robust defence, and all those other things the state provides. And that consent lasts until the next election, at which point those elected are either replaced or re-elected again. I know it's obvious, but it needs to be said because the government's forgotten it. The democratic principle is the cornerstone of our society and our civility. It safeguards the boundaries between the state and the individual. So it takes something pretty important to disturb that delicate equilibrium, and national emergency certainly, and I can recall the foot and mouth epidemic, COVID as two cases in point, when elections were delayed for proper purposes. But this time last year, elections were cancelled, and last March we had a debate, and the Minister made it quite clear that the 12-month cancellation was strictly a one-off. Back then, LGR was nothing more than an outside possibility. No detailed plans had been submitted, there had been no consultation. It wasn't clear what type of reconfiguration might be proposed. Surrey thought they were getting a mayor until they weren't, and London was most definitely in until it wasn't, and it was all just nods and winks. Local government reorganisation was no more certain then than saying the Prime Minister will be in his place until the next election, which would have been in May until they were cancelled. Now, I'm not saying that the noble lady misled the House last March, but events have shown that she did not have the authority to make the reassurances she gave. And she certainly didn't advance the ridiculous notion that decisions to cancel elections should be made by those who were already elected and have the most to lose. Had she explained that process back in March, she'd have been laughed out of the chamber. But that is her government's position today. Now, I've been a councillor for many years, and my lords, I tell you, you do not go into local government for the money. But once you're in it, the money can be pretty handy. So asking those people whether they ought to stay on is both a conflict of interest and a moral hazard. Now, of course, part of the justification for the delay was the need for economic growth as its number one priority, and that mayors were to be the conduit through growth would be delivered. Well, we know those elections have been delayed by 2 years, and that says all you need to know about the commitment to growth. But it is the mayoral angle, which is why I prefer my own amendments over those of my colleagues, because I have amendments that would not just go for local elections, but mayoral and PCC elections. Now, I'm sure the Minister will want to say, well, 3 elections were cancelled in Yorkshire, Somerset and Cumbria in 2021, and therefore there's precedent. But I don't accept that for a moment. And Lord Shipley will be reassured that I argued forcefully with the Minister that in the case of Yorkshire, putting Skipton, Selby and Scarborough in the same so-called local authority was crazy. But at least by that moment, although I disagreed with the outcome, orders had been laid, proposals had been made and consulted on. There was certainty about the creation of local government reorganisation at the time elections were cancelled. And in any event, it was only a single year's delay. But none of that relates to today's situation, and it's dishonest to draw some equivalence between the circumstances in 2021 and those of today. And that's why the law needs to be changed to stop the abuse. Those who want to dodge democracy have advanced quite a few bogus reasons. The county councils talk about capacity issues, forgetting that it's the district councils that run the elections in the shires. It said, well, it's all rather expensive, but democracy has its price, and the money's already been salted away. Salted away, accrued and set aside. So that argument holds water. I've heard it said that staff are so busy with other things, but running elections is a specialist task, and the electoral registration officers tend to focus on that and that alone. The truth is they aren't the people who are engaged in LGR and consultation on the big strategic matters with other authorities, including matters like disposal of assets. So all these arguments are bogus when measured against the fact that free and fair elections should be operated separately from those standing in them, and that's one of the fundamental separations of duties, and one for which the Electoral Commission, amongst others, was established. Now, in the earlier group, we discussed LGR, and you see, my lords, one of the problems here is that the public hasn't been offered a chance to express an opinion on local government reorganisation, just in case they elect a group of people who don't share the view. Now, my noble friend Lord Pickles told me in 2008 that if you don't trust the folks, don't go into politics, and he was right. But that doesn't suit a government with a tin ear to democracy and the value of civic history. Democracy is being denied in councils, it's already been denied in the mayoral elections, and whilst government is signalling the police and crime commissions are on their way out into the sunset, my amendments would at least require that the strongest possible relationship between the state and the individual isn't to result in a reckoning, because society has been abused by these proposals. So my proposal is that only the super affirmative process can only be used in the cases where elections might want to be cancelled. I can't think of reasons in the future why reasons you might want to cancel elections, but if so, it would ensure this two-step process where permission must first be sought to enter a secondary legislation, and then only by the affirmative method would it be separately approved by resolutions laid before both houses. But in any event, any resolution to cancel an election should be made no less than 3 months before the date of publication of the election, because it's important for parties and individuals to have enough time to prepare manifestos, select candidates, raise funds, and address all the practical matters that need to be care of. So my amendments would ensure that the preparation could take place effectively, allowing voters to mark their choices clearly on the ballot. Now, it's not just right, is the right thing, but it's wrong that confidence in the elections has been undermined, and that infects and contaminates and taints the democratic structures and process. But democracy is the underpinning of our society, the stability of our nation, and the integrity of all we hold dear. And here's the paradox. This evening, my lords, in this room, the unelected chamber is standing up for the elected rights of the population. Now, I'm not going to go on about the Schedule 28 and the funny business against first past the post, but by this debate, noble lords are being seen to be on the side of the people, and those who would reform your lordship's house can see what a slippery slope would happen if we're shoved out of the way. More cancellation of elections. What an irony that would be. These proposals, the law should be changed so elections can't be cancelled for ministerial convenience, except in the most extreme and robust cases of national emergency, like COVID, like foot and mouth, but not like local government reorganisation.